There's never a shortage of volunteers when the California Department of Fish and Wildlife plans its annual count of desert bighorn sheep in the San Gabriel Mountains. But when that count happens, the first weekend in March, weather often plays a role in just how successful it is. Binoculars and spotting scopes are valuable in finding the sheep, but on this morning, the wind, clouds, rain, and even hail means there's not much out there to count. The bighorn sheep will wait for better weather to reappear. The Lozanos are from Chino Hills, first-time participants in the survey and not discouraged by the lack of sheep.
And we've hiked around here all the time, but we've never given back in the sense that we're, helping out with conservation. So yeah, it's interesting.
When the weather does cooperate, the sheep are located and counted in several different sections of this mountain range north of Ontario. Some volunteers hike a mile uphill to their counting location. The more adventurous go much further into the hills, sometimes up and over boulders or through streams to find their designated counting spot. Debbie Miller-Marschke helps run the Society for the Conservation of Bighorn Sheep. 14 times she's happily hiked into the mountains for this project.
When you get out in the environment and you're with a lot of positive people, the day wasn't a wasted day. It's a memorable day. Even if I stayed home, I wouldn't remember what I did a month later, but I'm going to remember this day all year long.
The sheep have been counted every year since 1979. At one time, the San Gabriel population was about 740. Then it was down 80% during the late 90s. It's risen to about 400 sheep now. Biologists consider food availability, habitat loss, weather patterns, and fire history when trying to determine what helps or hurts the sheep population.
As stewards of California's wildlife resources, the Department of Fish and Wildlife is responsible for conserving this public trust, is what we call the wild animals of the state of California.
The survey doesn't just rely on volunteer counters on the ground. Biologists also fly over the San Gabriels for a second population estimate. That's why this year's count wasn't a total loss. The weather the day before allowed for a helicopter to spend time above the sheep. A key part of the survey is tracking the younger animals.
Is reproduction looking well? So one of the things that we really look at is how many lambs from last year have survived to this year. So we did get some decent numbers, sort of sample of that, where we can look at that recruitment, is what we call it, the recruitment ratio. And that gives us an indication if the population's doing okay, growing.
With the 2020 survey in the books, biologists will soon start planning for 2021. Once again, finding enough volunteers won't be a problem.
This is my third time doing the survey.
Okay, has this been the most fun you've had?
It's actually pretty fun being out here.